From courtside the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. Andrew with you once again. I'm joined as always by my co-host Derek, aka D for 3. Derek, as much as we all like to be on the cutting edge of technology with gaming, it's not always possible. However, outdated in some respects doesn't necessarily mean obsolete or unplayable. We have something to say about that, so please tip us off.
Yeah, on this week's episode, we are discussing the topic of sticking with past-gen releases of basketball video games, even though a new generation of consoles, in turn games, were released. This was also turned into a community question, where I asked the community which past-gen games they stuck with, and why. We received many responses, which we will share later in the show. So Andrew, a new console comes out, which promises to blow away past consoles. There are ads for the newest games, boasting new graphics, faster loading times, and new gameplay capabilities. But still, we are not swayed, at least not to the point of going to get that console or that version of the game. We decide to get or keep playing a past-gen version. And we have no regrets. I figured we could start the show by going over scenarios where this happened with us. But before I do that, we can promise you, the listener, that there will be no gatekeeping on the NLSC podcast. We will not say that you are broke for not getting the newest console or the newest version of a basketball game. And we won't say you are missing out or have bad taste either. But man, Andrew, have we heard people say these things in the past?
We have, and it's absolutely ridiculous. The amount of privilege, the arrogance to call people broke for not having the latest console is just ridiculous. And I guarantee you, Derek, a lot of people saying that, their parents are paying for their consoles and their games and their microtransactions.
Oh, absolutely. And in the examples where that is not the case, well, that person is just an ass. So my first example of a time where I stuck with the past version of a game is NBA Live 96 for Sega Genesis. As you know, Andrew, NBA Live 96 was also released on PlayStation, which promised 32-bit graphics and other enhancements. However, I was not swayed. But it's also important to note that at that time, I didn't have my own money. In turn, I couldn't go out and buy a PlayStation. I ended up getting a PlayStation a couple years later, packaged for Christmas with NBA Fast Break 98, which you know I loved, that game. I have no regrets about sticking with the Genesis version, as it had hidden legends and key missing players that could be created through the Create a Player feature. We put those legends on teams and had a blast. This was something that the PlayStation version did not offer. Furthermore, the PlayStation version did not get released until March of 1996, so I was able to get my hands on a version of NBA Live 96 much earlier and have all those months of joy. If I had to go back, Andrew, and do it all again, if I had my own money, I still would have gotten the Sega Genesis version of NBA Live 96, and I would have stuck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good in that version. And like you say, we didn't always have the ability to get the latest console. Didn't have our own money to buy the latest consoles, and they weren't cheap, as they are today, obviously. Or if you had an aging PC, like I did, you know, back in the day, a lot of PCs that were available off the shelf were not necessarily optimized for gaming. So getting a 486 in 1994, by 1996, a lot of CD-ROM games, like the NBA Live series, were demanding higher specs. I couldn't run them. So I was stuck between having that aging PC, a Super Nintendo, then I had a Nintendo 64, got that for my 13th birthday in 1997. To that end, I think the example for me would probably be NBA Live 99 for Nintendo 64. Now, yes, that was the latest Nintendo console, but the N64 version of NBA Live 99 is easily the weakest version of that game, Derek. I'm not sure if you've played it, but it certainly lags behind the PlayStation version and the PC version being the best version of NBA Live 99. So it wasn't until we got a new PC in 2000, and I started collecting a few other games that I'd missed out on, 98, 99, and the latest game 2000, that I was able to play the best version of the latest NBA Live. It's one of the reasons I stuck with NBA Live 96 for PC for so long, updating it with roster mods. But yeah, probably the N64 version of NBA Live 99, but I do have a lot of affection for that game. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I know that your first NBA Live PC game was NBA Live 96, right? My first was NBA Live 98, and I did a little bit of modding on that game as well. But let's talk about N64 for a second. The sports games on N64 overall just always bummed me out.
Yeah.
I feel like they were never as good as the other versions on other consoles or on PC. The games that I thought were strong on N64 that we spent a good amount of time on were GoldenEye 007 and F-Zero X. But as far as basketball video games, I don't think they were very strong at all on the N64.
No, not at all. Like I said, I do enjoy NBA Live 99 for N64 for what it is. It's fun enough on the sticks. Of course, it's got the outdated 98 season rosters because of the lockout. No updates like the PC version. Doesn't have the enhancements of the PlayStation version either. Probably the basketball game that holds up the best on N64 is NBA Hangtime, because it is that simpler game, because it is a pretty good arcade port. I'm not saying it's the best home port of Hangtime, because I don't think it is, but I had a lot of fun with that game, myself and my friends playing that a lot in 1997, early 1998. So we get a lot of nostalgia for Hangtime, pretty solid release, but when it comes to the sim games in particular, that N64 controller was not designed for that kind of basketball game, or sports game in general.
The next scenario I'm going to bring up is me sticking with NBA Live 2000 PC, despite having NBA Live 2001 for PS2. I know this is a little bit different because it's not the same year for the game, but it's important to note why I did that. So, NBA Live 2000 PC is in contention for the best NBA Live release of all time. I think you would agree.
Yep.
I think the game looks great. The gameplay still stands the test of time. We've played it multiple times, co-op or head-to-head, and we just always have a blast with it. It's incredibly deep. Some great cyber faces in that game as well, and it's just so fun from a gameplay perspective. I feel like Roger and Nate may get mad at me for saying this, but yeah, the gameplay wasn't ready, in my opinion, in NBA Live 2001. I think that there's a lot of delay when you put an input on the controller from when it happens on the screen. That makes, making quick plays tough sometimes, where, you want to do a quick swing out to an open shooter. There's a delay. Then you push the button to shoot. There's a delay. And then the shot goes up, but now the defender's in your face. I just think that it was that first year with the new motion system for the NBA Live series. And from a gameplay perspective, it just wasn't there for me. I've gone back and played it recently, both with you and against the computer and with my brother. And yeah, a lot of those same feelings are still there as it relates to the issues, the input delay, the limitations when it comes to gameplay, the super dark arenas, the blah body types, etc. I just don't think that game was ready for prime time, and I still like Live 2000 quite a bit better.
Yeah, if you go back... Well, unfortunately, you can't go back at this time because our old forum is still in my archives. Haven't quite figured out how to get it up and running as static pages at this time. But back in the day, NBA Live 2000 was very highly regarded by our community. It is funny when you dig through the archives and see some of the complaints, some of the criticisms of the game. Some of them are valid. Others are like, wow, we didn't know how good we had it at the time, especially after Live 2001 came out. And Live 2001, to your point, they did change the programming language, did rewrite that game from scratch. And yeah, it wasn't ready for prime time. The PC version was delayed for months because they had the smaller team working on the PC version. Didn't come out until March 2001, a very late release. So that was very controversial in our community as well. A lot of people sticking with Live 2000 PC back in the day because of that. And once again, to your point, even after the PC version of NBA Live 2001 came out, people still played it. We certainly modded it. And in time, people did kind of gravitate towards it. But a lot of people stuck with Live 2000, throughout 2001's life cycle. Beyond that, because, NBA Live 2002 being exclusive to console, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. A lot of people in that community still updating NBA Live 2000 and 2001 up until the 2003 season. And even further beyond that, of course. Because, as you said, Live 2000, such a landmark release. So, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people stuck with Live 2000, even when 2001 was out, and beyond that.
Then they completely changed course with NBA Live 2003. Right?
Yeah.
NBA Live 2002 built off of Live 2001. Some improvements here and there. Defense got quite a bit worse, I will say that, in Live 2002. But the pace of those two games is very similar. Then you get to NBA Live 2003, and it really is as dramatic as the change from NBA Showdown to NBA Live 95. The pace got a lot faster. The gameplay became more dynamic. They completely changed course, and for the better, right? NBA Live 2003, you weren't a big fan of it at the time. You've kind of grown to like it a little bit more these days, revisiting it, especially when you and I revisit it together. But you can't deny that the right stick triple threat, right stick dribbling, the faster pace, for better or for worse, was still the right move for the NBA Live series. And then they produced NBA Live 2004, which is one of your favorite games of all time, and then NBA Live 2005 and NBA Live 06. And all of those games, in my opinion, were strong.
Yeah, strong run, especially on PC, obviously, with the modding. Yeah, Live 2003, I have warmed up to it. I've warmed up to the silly tone, the courtside comedy cutscenes, as we've often called them, in reference to that home video, which I'm sure you're well aware of, Derek. Yeah, the right stick controls were a revolution. The freestyle revolution, absolutely. So I appreciate it for that, and I can have fun with the game. But yeah, I certainly do like 2004 through 06 a lot more, but no denying that they made a huge improvement with that right stick dribbling and the right stick controls in general. They just needed to tone down the rest of the game, make it a bit more realistic for my liking. Brought in the sliders, of course, in Live 2004, which really helped us customize the game to our liking. So it definitely got better from there. But it does start with Live 2003, absolutely. And as far as sticking with that previous generation, I think for me, it probably is NBA Live 06, specifically with the PC version. I didn't get an Xbox 360 straight away, mostly because I was focused on the PC version and modding at the time. But with that being said, having played the Xbox 360 version since then, while I have come to appreciate that version as well, Derek, and I think you have as well, maybe a bit more than we did back in the day, the PC version, which is the port of the PS2 version, Xbox version, GameCube version, is the better version of the game. NBA Live 06 PC is my favorite game of all time, my favorite basketball game of all time. I'm not saying it's the best, that is a separate list, but it is certainly my favorite. The PC version obviously has the advantage of modding, as well as the mouse in the menus, I suppose. So even though it is a last-gen version, it does have many advantages over its console brethren. But yeah, that was definitely a time when I was kind of looking at what they were doing with next-gen, but still very focused on PC, Derek. So was kind of content to stay with the last-gen version. And of course, it was the better game overall.
Yeah, my next example was also NBA Live 06, but a different version. We stuck with the PS2 version, and we played it a ton. When we found out that the Xbox 360 version of the game did not have Freestyle Superstars, that it didn't have Legends, and that you couldn't use multiple teams in a season, that version ended up being dead to us. We didn't play it at all. I learned about the lack of features on the internet at the time, not by owning the game. So it saved me from having to go out, buy it, and then find out that way. NBA Live 06 for PS2 was very deep from a gameplay perspective. Sure, it didn't run at 60 FPS like the PC version, but back then, we didn't even really think about that stuff. I think you would agree. More often than not, if a game ran in 30 FPS, then, we just kind of accepted it.
Honestly,
nowadays,
yeah.
I guess, yeah, I guess for me nowadays, it means a lot more. I think I'm spoiled in that way. And I think part of the reason for that is because now I've seen how beautiful 60 FPS is, especially in sports games.
It's hard to go back. Yeah.
Naturally today, which version of Live 06 do you think I boot up the most? The PC version, because you get it in that beautiful 60 FPS. The resolution is higher. It looks better. Like you stated, you can also have mods for the PC version, etc. But yeah, we stuck with the PS2 version of Live 06, and we absolutely loved it. And we also spent a lot of time on Live 2005 as well.
And for me, that continued with NBA Live 07 as well. Even at the community event, which was my very first NBA Live community event back in 2006, 20 years this year, Derek, I did play the Xbox 360 version, actually put up my hand first when they said, who wants to have a go? I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be shy here. I'm going to put up my hand and have a go at this new version, having not played the 360 version of '06, only seen the reviews, only seen videos of it at the time. But even then, I was still spending most of my time with the Xbox version, the original Xbox version, because that was what we were getting on PC. So that's what I wanted to mostly report back to our community, because again, we're focused on PC, focused on modding, so that was the version that I was interested in. But I did spend some time with the 360 version of Live 07 at that event. If you can believe it, Derek, the version that I played was even rougher than the version that was released.
Impossible.
You'd think
Impossible.
so?
I think NBA Live 07 for the Xbox 360 is the worst AAA basketball video game release of all time.
Oh, it is.
I can't believe how bad that game is.
I agree. And it does sound like a big claim, I know. But the build that I played didn't have nets. You would jump sideways out of bounds and then warp behind the backboard and then warp backwards through and dunk. There were definitely some really rough bugs in that build that we played. Looking back, it was very deliberate that we had mostly a studio tour and about 45 minutes to an hour of hands-on time with that game. We brought that up and said, look, we put our reputation on the line here, playing this game, getting a very curated look at this game. So in future community events, they did give us a lot more time on the sticks, which I did appreciate. And of course, Live did get better from 08 to 09 to 10. And then of course the Elite 11 debacle. But yeah, I actually did play NBA Live 07 for 360. A pre-release build was incredibly rough. They were able to fix those problems by release, but not a lot of the underlying problems with the game, obviously. Like you say, has a very good case to be the worst AAA basketball game ever released. But yeah, obviously in our community, because we do have that history of modding, we were more interested in the PC version, so I was spending more time with the Xbox version at that event, and post-release, still didn't have an Xbox 360 anyway, would be a few more months until I got one, and did get Live 07 at that time. But yeah, once again, sticking with a last-gen port on PC.
Yeah, the past-gen versions of NBA Live 07 blow away the Xbox 360 version.
And they're not great either. Live 07 was a disappointment on PC. Some bugs, not that great on the sticks compared to 06, 2005, 2004. So it's a low bar, and the 360 version still failed to clear it.
The next example I want to bring up, I triple-dipped with NBA 2K14. I bought the Xbox One version, the Xbox 360 version, and the PC version. I didn't touch the 360 version. I played the Xbox One version for a bit, but it was missing most of the depth that my brothers and I needed for it to last any significant amount of time. We ended up spending thousands of hours on the PC version. In fact, I think Steam says that I've played it for over 3,000 hours, and that's been reset at one point. The clock started over at some point in time on Steam. The PC version was a PS3 Xbox 360 port. So this is technically sticking with the past-gen version of a basketball video game. There are many reasons why I did this. One, the game had multi-team use in season mode, meaning we could all use a team, classic, current, or through a fantasy draft, and play against each other in the season. Number two, Andrew, mods. NBA 2K14 for the PC is the most modded basketball video game of all time. You could have realistic and complete classic seasons and classic team mods, TV-style scoreboards, more accurate cyber faces, courts and jerseys, etc., etc. You can change the entire look of the game. It was and still is a beautiful thing. Third reason, the gameplay was as strong as the Xbox One version, if not stronger from a balance standpoint. Foot planning is better, and the game is not over-animated, which at times I feel 2K14 for the Xbox One PS4 is. And lastly, the depth. I didn't play the mode, but it has LeBron Path to Greatness, more roster editing, saving, and sharing options, etc. Just the PC version of NBA 2K14, I think, is one of the best basketball video games from a gameplay and depth perspective of all time.
Agreed. I didn't appreciate it at the time for various reasons, which I have mentioned before. To quickly recap them, NBA 2K13, I wasn't quite ready to move on from. I had enjoyed that so much. Kind of had the new game blues with 2K14. Not quite ready to move on at that time. As I've said before, the comments that the developers were making about NBA Live 14. The 2K devs taking some shots at NBA Live 14, not unwarranted, I suppose, as far as the accuracy of their statements. I did feel they were very unprofessional, though, towards their peers in the industry, not the company of EA, but the people actually working on the game, their fellow developers, their fellow programmers. Really kind of soured me on the game prematurely. I went into 2K14 with a sour attitude, Derek, as I've said before, wanting to find fault, not wanting to enjoy the game. It took me quite a while to warm up to the game, and of course I've actually ended up warming up to the PlayStation 4 version a lot more. 6 seasons into my 7th season and counting in my career in NBA 2K14 for PlayStation 4. But yeah, in our community especially, a lot of people sticking with the prior gen version, specifically the PC port, because of the modding, because of how strong that game was. So yeah, I think that's a great example of people sticking with that prior gen version. Also, because that came out a couple of months before the launch of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So a lot of people had already bought the PC version, or the PS3 version, or the 360 version. Not everybody upgraded to those new consoles straight away. So I think a lot of people were on last gen for another year at that point.
I agree that it was unprofessional, the way they approached that, the way they critiqued it. But I will say on the NLSC podcast today that NBA Live 14 is absolutely piss poor gameplay-wise compared to NBA 2K14. We know that, but there was they could have handled that better. I will say that NBA Live 14 was massively disappointing, especially after all of that time off. The expectations were there that, they had enough time to cook up a solid product, that it was going to be truly a jump, that it was going to be a next-gen release as those consoles were new, and just the expectations were there, right? And it fell flat. It was missing so much depth that prior versions of NBA Live had, especially the mid and early 2000s NBA Lives. The animations were really, really poor. It felt clunky in your hands. And from a graphics perspective, you and I have talked about this before, it's questionable if it was a jump at all from PS3 gen. In fact, looking at the game again and booting it up, I think some of the PS3 basketball video game releases had better graphics and presentation than NBA Live 14. So, yeah, I agree they were unprofessional the way they handled it, but man, was NBA Live 14 incredibly disappointing.
Oh yeah, I mean, they were on target with their criticisms. It was the same kind of snark that we were throwing around as gamers, and understandably so, rightfully so, because of how disappointing that game was, as you said. But yeah, it just felt so petty, so unprofessional, especially when they were already winning the war, so to speak. 2K had pulled ahead in sales, critical acclaim, they were the dominant brand. It felt like punching down, again, to their peers in the industry, not so much the multi-billion-dollar corporation, forget about that, but the people working on the game. And indeed, some people who were working on Live 14 ended up going to work for 2K. So, you can end up making fun of your future co-workers there. So, kind of uncool. Absolutely agree. They were on point with what they said. It was certainly worthy of mockery. Live 14 is up there, or I suppose down there, with Live 07. I think we have to give the nod to 07 for various reasons, but yeah, it did rub me the wrong way. That being said, I do love 2K14 for PlayStation 4 now, do love the PC version as well, have spent more time with the PS4 version because I got so into my career as I have. Actually do want to spend some more time with the PC version. Actually want to play through Path to Greatness, Derek. Some interesting story twists there with the fantastic journey, which actually kind of predicted LeBron's future career. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I haven't dabbled in that. I might look at it at some point. I will say, though, I know how much you loved NBA 2K13. Finally, they get the right stick control, right stick triple threat, right stick dribbling. You're able to get some of your NBA Live feels, but with an NBA 2K game. And that game was so well made. NBA 2K13 is one of my favorite games in the series. Sure, at times it can feel a little bit too unrealistic. You could say, I don't want to use the word arcade because, like you and I have stated, when you think the word arcade, you think of NBA Jam and NBA Hang Time and people dunking with their feet at the rim, etc. But I would say that the biggest faults with NBA 2K13 are probably too much street ball feel during the NBA action, and then just the inability to block dunks and just the auto adjustments at the rim that would happen so often. But otherwise, I think NBA 2K13 is just an amazing game, and I still go back and play it and have a blast.
Absolutely. One of my favorites. That game, like you said, that allowed me to finally get into the NBA 2K series after being that NBA Live fanboy growing up, after having those preferences shaped by NBA Live, and the right stick dribbling that came in with NBA Live 2003. So 2K13, absolutely an all-time favorite. Does hold up. I'm very keen to play it more myself this year. Actually, it's on my list of games I'd like to bring back into the rotation, especially playing a bit more than my career. As much as I enjoyed that my career, my first year getting into that mode, I want to play some other modes as well. The traditional gameplay, so to speak. There's some great roster mods out there which I want to check out. Pat the Head's been doing some fantastic work. Would like to try out some of his rosters. Actually, Carolus had a great explanation of the inability to block in our Discord. Derek, you may have seen him post that the other day, talking about how the ball is intangible when it's in the player's hands, but there's that split second where it becomes tangible again on dunk attempts, where you can get that rare block. It doesn't register as a block in the stats, but you can actually block in those very rare circumstances. Comparatively, layups, you have more time after the ball leaves the hands, becomes tangible again. I love those technical explanations. We need more of them in our community, Derek, and shout out to Carolus for sharing that in our Discord.
Yeah, how many times did I get bummed out going into the instant replay on NBA 2K13 and watching my hand go through the ball when somebody tried to dunk on me and I timed it perfectly and they just wouldn't let me get that block. So that explanation definitely makes sense. I was equally frustrated in NBA 2K13 with the auto-adjusted layups at the rim, where you wouldn't even adjust it as the offensive player. You would just drive down the lane, and if your player was met with contact, the game would auto-adjust the layup, and it made it so your opponent basically had a 0% chance of blocking it, even as a layup, even when the ball became not tangible, right? Because of that auto-adjust. I'm glad that they took that out in future releases of NBA 2K.
Yeah, it was kind of funny that 2K14, during the previous season, actually advertised, you can block dunks again. It was kind of weird to advertise that as a feature, but also pretty welcome news as well. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So before we get to the responses to this week's community question, I wanted to briefly discuss the game we had on NBA 2K11 for the PS2. I was shocked at how much I was enjoying this game, Andrew. And the basketball gaming community is really enjoying the footage that I uploaded to Twitter and YouTube. We used the Thunder versus the CPU Clippers. And how fun is that Thunder team? We have Russell Westbrook, James Harden off the bench. We have Kevin Durant. We have Serge Ibaka. Jeff Green is there to spread the floor and throw it down. Just a really fun Thunder team. And we were against the Baron Davis, Blake Griffin Clippers. We blew them out. The AI isn't super strong. We were playing on All-Star. I probably should have upped that difficulty. I didn't realize how bad they were going to be. We ended up winning that game by 30 in 6-minute quarters. But the game has great pace, in turn, pretty addicting action. I'm also impressed with the look of the game. While obviously not as strong in the graphics department as NBA 2K11 for Xbox 360 and PS3, it still looks great. The cyberfaces are mostly spot on. I mean, look at that Michael Jordan cyberface, Andrew. The Blake Griffin face, Kevin Durant, etc. The players look and move like athletes, and you can make some awesome highlights. From a presentation standpoint, it still has Harlan and Kellogg, and the game has a strong instant replay system. But as I noted earlier, and I think you would agree, the AI is lacking on the lower difficulty levels, All-Star and below. It is far better on Xbox 360 and PS3 releases. There are also far too many missed shots right at the rim. I mean, these are NBA players, and they're missing 2-footers off the front of the rim consistently. The depth is also missing as it relates to Michael Jordan and classic players, teams, and legends. In fact, there's a menu option for Michael Jordan, but when you select it, it brings you to the team select screen, where you only have the option to choose 3 Jordan teams, mid-'80s, early '90s, and late '90s. And they're all using the same court. It looks like the court from the mid-late '90s Bulls, and the game is also missing some important players on those Bulls teams. For example, on the late '90s Bulls, they're missing Dennis Rodman. Kukoc is starting in his place. But yeah, disappointing from a Michael Jordan perspective, disappointing from a classic player and team perspective. But the game is fun. I think you would agree. And that footage shows that.
Yeah, you've got that mix of a game that's pretty good for a last-gen port, long beyond that platform being the current generation. But it's also mixed with, this is definitely a lower priority. Like you said, haven't licensed Dennis Rodman, haven't added all of the Jordan teams, opponents for them, but at the same time you've got that great Jordan face, so it is definitely a mixed bag. But on the court, certainly fun. It does show its age, obviously. Only so much effort was going into it at that point. You've still got that floaty floater near the rim when you try to go up for that layup. That was in 2K6 for Xbox 360. They eventually did get rid of that over the course of the next few years on the 360 PS3 generation. But you do still have those legacy issues, obviously, on PS2. But at the same time, exciting action. I was bringing the ball up with Eric Maynor, put it behind my back and flicked it to you for a big dunk by Kevin Durant. Exciting moments, which is what you want.
You were like, boom, in the chat.
I was.
You were really excited.
I really enjoyed
that. How great is it to get excited like that playing a classic basketball game? I mean, this game was new, 16 years ago. And we can have those awesome moments. I think it's also important to note, and I'll throw it back to you, that Michael Jordan is also missing, for some reason, from the 80s and 90s All-Stars teams, so the all-decade teams in the game. They have him on Team Jordan and on the Bulls teams that I mentioned, but for some reason, he's not on the all-decade teams. So that stuff appears to be rushed.
Yeah.
Right? It's also important to note that, and I think you would agree, the game has really good control. Step backs, jump stops, doing the crossover, like the quick crossover using the trigger, and then in combination with your directional, shooting fadeaways, the dunks on the break. Like overall, the game has pretty solid control. And I think that's why it stands the test of time and why we can still have fun with it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what you want from any game, obviously. But like you say, when you're retro gaming, when you can fire it up and you get fired up by a play like that, that shows that there is something to that game. Enough depth to the controls, like you said, enough depth to the gameplay that you can pull off moves, you can make plays, make satisfying plays, create highlights. That's what you want. That's what will make a game fun. So you definitely can do that with the PS2 version of NBA 2K11. NBA 2K was solid enough on PlayStation 2 by the mid-2000s that by adding some further polish here and there, a few little updates by the time NBA 2K11 came out, that it is pretty good for that prior-gen version that's not getting as much attention. Of course, it has aged even more than the 360 PS3 version and the PC port, naturally. Being that lower priority, doesn't have as much polish, doesn't have that attention to detail in the rosters, like you said, does have that data technology, but, pretty good, pretty solid on the sticks.
It's also worth noting that it is the same motion system as NBA 2K6 for PS2. But I enjoy 2K11 PS2 more because of the free-flowing gameplay. I think that the players feel better overall. I feel like there's less annoying interruptions. I feel like collisions at the hoop are more realistic and they're not as canned. Overall, I find the gameplay to be stronger. And you and I talked about this off air a little bit and you agreed. I feel like the gameplay is a bit stronger on 2K11 on the sticks for the PS2, despite being the same motion system.
Well, you can make jump shots I find jump shots incredibly difficult in 2K6. I don't think they balance that very well. And I do want to play 2K11 on a higher difficulty level. I think we should revisit it on Superstar just to see how balanced it is. See if it gives us that challenge while still being fairly balanced. Because All-Star, which usually gives us a fairly good challenge in most games, was definitely too weak in that game. You know, the CPU wasn't taking advantage of opportunities. It was kind of funny. The commentary said, the Clippers have got to cut down on their turnovers, and then Baron Davis ran straight out of bounds, committing a turnover. So that was pretty funny.
They step out of bounds a lot.
Yeah.
They were stepping out of bounds a lot.
Not
only were they... Yeah, not only that, they were dribbling into the middle of the paint and just standing there and then putting up a contested shot.
Yeah, issues like
pretty,
that. Yeah.
Pretty easy to stop them. So yeah, I want to try it on the hardest difficulty and see how that co-op experience goes. I also want to let our listeners know that we weren't playing the native PS2 version. We were actually playing off of the PCSX2 emulator in combination with Parsec, and that worked very well.
Oh, I mean, Parsec has been so wonderful for us. But they've made some great strides with that emulator, pretty much everything working properly. We do need to fire up Street Volume 2. That was having some issues with one of the updates. I think they have fixed it. Have you played Street Volume 2 since that update?
Last time I used it, it worked perfect.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, it should be fine now. We have a campaign that we're doing on that game right now where we're trying to beat all the NBA teams. And, yeah, we have to continue that. So let's get to the community's responses to this week's community question. I asked, a new console generation begins, but you stick with the past-gen version of a newly released basketball game. Did you ever do this? And I gave examples, playing NBA 2K6 on PS2 instead of 360, playing Live 06 on PS2 instead of 360, and we received a lot of responses to this tweet. It's at 27,000 views right now, Andrew, 167 likes, so people were loving this. SG24, Josh at SportsGaming24 states, never had the 360. I waited until 2007 for the PS3, so I was playing Live 06 and 2K6 on the PS2. Pretty sure I played the PS2 versions of Live 07 and 2K7 on my PS3 at first, too. Then 2K and Live 08 were my first next-gen games, with a lot of PSP gaming in between. And he actually just showed a picture of his basketball gaming collection. Looks like he's trying to catch up to us, Andrew. He also has a version of NBA Live 2002 that I do not have, or at least the cover athlete. He has the Japanese version, which has Michael Jordan on the cover for PS2.
Yeah, I do have that one, and it's probably one of my favorite collectibles.
Stasho Bro at Nate Stasho, Live 01 legend, friend of the show, states, I played NBA 2K14 on Xbox 360. Again, that's such a great game. LeMace at King J Mace, also a friend of the show. We've had him on as well. He stated, me playing 2K23 PC instead of console 2K26. Sometimes past gen just plays better. He loves the gameplay on 2K23 PC, and he loves the mods. He does a high school mod. He has street mods. He connects with the community, gets everybody involved. And yeah, he was great on the show.
Yeah, and with the PC version being that prior gen port, technically a lot of people have stuck with the prior gen version by being on PC, again, because modding has been such a big thing in our community over the years. That has been the advantage of the PC version. So yeah, that is probably accounts for a lot of people technically sticking with the prior gen version of 2K and Live back in the day too.
Ryan Housen from Wakeman at Ryan from Wakeman states, dude, come on, 2K on PS2 is better till 11. I also still play Madden 09. It's the best one for the PS2. And the last year you can pop off a helmet. As it relates to 2K, I feel different as it relates to 2K7, 2K9, and 2K10. I like them better on Xbox 360 and PS3. I know that you were on a super kick with NBA 2K6 for the Xbox 360. You were sharing highlights, playing it a ton, throwing it down with Barkley, who's actually in that game. So I'm sure that you believe that NBA 2K6, at least in your hands, is better on the 360 than the PS2.
Yeah, I recently went back to the PS2 version of 2K6. I want to cover it for Way Back Wednesday, you know, just in general, because there's many games I want to cover. And having become a fan of the 360 version, I was curious to see how I like the PS2 version, because when I picked up the PS2 version back in the day, out of curiosity, I ended up not liking the game, ended up taking it back, trading it in, and saying, oh, 2K is definitely not for me. NBA Live is still my game. And Live 06 PC, once again, one of the best releases in the series. My favorite. One of the last all-around great releases in the NBA Live series, from gameplay to modes to features. So I was interested to see if I'd changed my mind, having gotten used to the 2K series, loving the 360 version of 2K6 as I do. And yeah, I was unimpressed. I didn't feel a balance was there. I need to spend more time with it, but yeah, I don't think that the PS2 version is better than the 360 version. And having gone back and played through the sequels, 2K7, 2K8, 2K9, etc., I definitely think the 360 PS3 generation and the PC ports are the stronger versions of the game. Actually, I would be interested to compare 2K8, because I'm not a fan of 2K8 for 360 and PS3. Maybe I would like the PS2 version of that better, but generally speaking, I would respectfully disagree. But, with that being said, if it's more fun for him, that's a valid opinion for him to have. That's a valid preference if he enjoyed that version more. Obviously, many of us have stuck with the prior gen version of games for many reasons, feeling that they hold up a bit better, not liking what they're doing with the current generation. So I do get it, even if I disagree.
Yeah, there's no gatekeeping here.
Absolutely not.
Kung Pao Enjoyer at Shrek2 Fanboy states, going back to 2K12 on PS2, when my 360 stopped working, horrid version of the game. And yeah, after playing NBA 2K11 for PS2, I do find it stronger than 2K12 PS2. Coach D at Coach Deadman states, basically everyone stuck with PS2 Xbox instead of moving to PS3 360 in 2006-2007 with EA. EA's transition to next gen was a complete failure. I think NBA Live 06 for the 360 had some strong elements. I thought the graphics were amazing. The player models, the cyber faces, I thought the arenas looked good despite being dark. Overall, the details were there. It still had some of the gameplay bones from NBA Live 2005, and then, of course, the past-gen version of NBA Live 06. Where they failed miserably is just losing all of the depth, right, that they had, or at least most of it, in the past-gen versions. The game was very bland. I also think that overall the pace was too slow. Making moves was too slow. You can turn that game speed up to 100 in NBA Live 06 for 360, and it's still overall pretty sluggish. So, yeah, not strong with NBA Live 06 overall for the 360, and then NBA Live 07, in my opinion, the worst AAA basketball game ever released.
Yeah, whenever we've played NBA Live 06 for 360, have usually turned the game speed up to at least 80 or 90, often maxing out to 100, to your point, and still not quite what we'd like to see. I don't want to use the word underrated for Live 06 360. It kind of is, in so much as people say it was a complete disaster overall. The gameplay, Live 07, I think, is a much bigger disaster on the court. Ironically, it is better as far as modes and features, bringing back Dynasty, bringing back All-Star Weekend, bringing back a couple of other features. So it made some progress there while taking a big step backwards on the court. If you go back and look at contemporary reviews, NBA Live 06 for 360, a lot of reviews say it's pretty solid on the court, the graphics are amazing, the sweat, we all love the sweat, Derek, but the lack of depth. The legends are gone, the retro jerseys are gone, Dynasty's gone, the depth is gone. Okay on the court, certainly could be a lot worse, but there's not much to sink your teeth into. So that was the big knock on 06. That being said, there are definitely better games on the court as well.
It also launched at 30 FPS.
That too.
And it also had a very limited selection of camera views, and there wasn't really one great one. The best views in that game was there's a sideline view that was still too close, and you could never quite zoom it out quite enough. And maybe the behind view, which is similar to 2K. But yeah, missing a lot of depth, missing features, running at 30 FPS, super blah.
No manual replay. Can you believe that? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you had that in games in the 90s. So, yeah, unacceptable. Wave states, the dribble and cross launch Baron did in this clip looks more fluid than the dribbling today. And he's talking about the dribbling in NBA 2K26. And the highlight that I shared with the community question was me playing NBA 2K6 for PS2, doing a size-up dribble with Baron Davis crossing over into a floater. Symbol at Symbol the Rapper states, I've done this a couple times because I got the new system late. I played NBA 2K6 on OG Xbox, and I think I tried NBA 2K14 on PS3 because it was a monthly free game. Historically, I've gotten all the next-gen systems within 6 months of their release. Brolus at Brolus92 states, when I was a kid and couldn't afford PS3 versions of the games, I was sticking to PS2 versions. Once I started working, I always play new gen only. And yeah, like I stated earlier, my example of sticking with the Sega Genesis version of NBA Live 96, I was so young that I didn't have my own money. I couldn't go out and buy a PlayStation. But again, I probably still would have stuck with that version. Anyway, Emmanuel at It's Shooty states, did it with NBA Live 2003 on PS1. And that's interesting, Andrew, because that game is basically the exact same from a gameplay perspective as NBA Live 2000 for PS1. I've played both of them, and I struggle to see any differences from a gameplay perspective. So I guess, hey, if you like the gameplay from NBA Live 2000 from PS1, yeah, he was going to like the gameplay for NBA Live 2003.
And the funny thing about the PlayStation version of NBA Live 2003 is that it has the same intro from the PS2 version and the PC version and the Xbox version for that matter, which is a highlight reel made in-engine. It's highlight clips from the game. So if you're firing up Live 2003 for PS1 and you see this intro and you're like, wow, this looks awesome, and then you get on the court and it is the same game that it's been since Live 2000, sure, you've probably seen some previews, you've seen the back of the box, hopefully you've realized what you're getting, but what a tease to put that same intro from the PS2, PC, Xbox version in the PlayStation 1 version. Really should have just done an old school real video intro there, because that is almost false advertising, Derek.
I agree. That's kind of unacceptable. The teasing of that, and then you get in, and it's not even that. So I agree there. Rue at Ruward states, because of nostalgia, easier to mod, especially the PC port, and accessible for all toasters without getting fried by newer games requiring expensive specs. Also on PC, it's the only way to play multiplayer with LAN. Not sure exactly what game they are talking about, but toasters, he's referring to basically being able to work on any PC. And he must be just talking about playing on PC and the PC versions of basketball games. JBadge at _JBadge_ states, yes, and I'm replaying NBA 2K6 on PS2 right now. The 24/7 mode is great. Sexiest man on X at Keep Going R. That might be debatable, Andrew. PS2 Madden and NBA Live 06 through 08 was better than the newer console versions. And
Agreed.
We agree, especially we agree, especially with NBA Live 06 PC, but definitely with 07 and 08 as well. Next, we have Willie Goller at Big Willie _54. Not sure why we have to have Sexiest Man on X followed by Big Willie, but he states, yeah, I played NBA 2K6 on Xbox. I wouldn't get a next-gen basketball game till I got 2K7 used during the playoffs that year. Fixus, still in Melancholy Hill, states PS2 era NBA games are fun until you increase the difficulty. And yeah, I think we need to do that, though, on NBA 2K11 for PS2. Give that a try and see if it's more of a challenge for us. Cabal at Floating Cabal states NBA 2K21 and NBA 2K22 current over next gen. DGD34 states playing 2K11 remastered right now. That was a mod that was created for the PC version for the community, and I've seen some gameplay for it. It looks awesome. The Franchise states NBA Live 06 on the Xbox. Some Nobody at Some Nobody states, did this all the time. PS2 Maddens were better than the PS3 and 360 versions, in my opinion. Love Plug at Donnie Hardaway states, yeah, I'm taking Live 06 PS2 over Xbox 360 all day, and we definitely agree with you. Blackhearted at Cliff Got Da Juice states, Live 06 on PS2 for me. Love that game. At Christopher407 states, this is absolutely me. And then Master O'Neill at Master O'Neill states, currently doing it with 2K26, so he's playing either the PS4 or Xbox One version of that game. And lastly, Ferndale at No Yorker Anon states NBA 2K6. So playing the past gen version of that game. So a lot of responses on X, some interesting handles, people getting creative and at the same time questionable. But yeah, good stuff, Andrew.
Yeah, and it goes to show that it is more common than some people may think. And once again, highlights how really petty, how pathetic, quite frankly, it is to shame people for not upgrading. You know, not everybody is in that position to upgrade right away. Not everybody trusts the new generation right away, and rightfully so. Not every new gen launch title has lived up to expectations. So there is a benefit to not adopting new technology right away. We've seen the first models of consoles have a lot of problems. How many Xbox 360s have there been? I'm on my third at this time. So yeah, that speaks volumes. I'm on my second PS2. You know, fingers crossed that holds up. Of course, we do have the emulator these days, so that does help preserve it. But yeah, there are reasons people don't upgrade right away. In many cases, the prior gen version remains more than playable, sometimes even preferable. So yeah, not surprised to see that a lot of people have stuck with prior gen, sometimes for more than a year.
We also did receive one response on Discord. Juicy Shackby, speaking of questionable names, states, usually this happens because our family couldn't afford the newer generation of consoles. Most notable example for me was playing NBA Live 2003 on PS1. My dad bought it for me, but not before noticing it looks exactly like the game last year. And I replied, it has updated players. So hey, Juicy Shackmeat, you got updated rosters. Be grateful.
Yeah, I had that discussion with my dad back in the day as well. You've already got a basketball game. Yeah, but this has got the new players, the new rookies. You know, it's got this as well. It's got these new features. Yeah, parents didn't always understand that. But to that point, even when a prior gen version is no longer the priority, it's basically just a roster update, you still want to have those players officially in the game, with their faces, with the audio. I did notice that Serge Ibaka was being called number 9 a lot in NBA 2K11 for PS2. That does happen as well, especially when games are that lower priority because they are the last-gen version. But there was still value in having those updated rosters. You know, we talked about it last week with NBA Live 96, Derek, having the Vancouver Grizzlies and the Toronto Raptors in that game. Even the 16-bit version where you had to hold the expansion draft and create the rookies, and you had players who had retired or were out of the league in the 96 season. You know, you're still able to do more with that game than NBA Live 95, as far as updating the rosters, as far as having the Raptors and Grizzlies in the league. So there was still value to that prior gen version.
Yeah, I agree. I still think that using the Live 2003 PS2 intro in the PS1 version is unacceptable. You got to use footage from the game that the person bought. So, but yeah, I'm sure that didn't thrill Juicy Shackmeat when he saw that intro.
Yeah, that was bad.
So did we receive any responses on Facebook?
Yes, we did have a few people weigh in on Facebook. Ryan says, I was given NBA 2K6 for PS2 at Christmas in 2005. It was my first introduction to 2K. Fast forward to today, I'll always say the PS2 version is one of my all-time favourite games. Yeah, so obviously the Xbox 360 version was coming, but PS2, probably being a cheaper console at that time, still very playable, still a lot of games coming out for PS2, obviously right up until 2011, Derek, with NBA 2K12, so still a viable console to have in 2005.
And I see where he's coming from, too, because I don't personally love 2K6 for PS2. I see the value there, and it has a lot of depth, right? And there's a lot of modes in that version that you can sink your teeth into. The gameplay is still as deep as ESPN NBA 2K5. So yeah, I get it. I understand why he would have fond memories of that game.
Justin says 2K6 and Live 06 are the perfect examples of this. And obviously people have mentioned both of those games already, and Live 06 definitely sticking with the prior gen version. You know, I'm obviously partial to the PC version because of all the fun I had with it, because of modding, obviously, Derek. You know, there was a benefit to sticking with that prior gen version, or its PC port, because, yeah, the 360 version wasn't everything we wanted it to be, and it needed to be.
Yeah. Looking back, I wish I had the PC version of NBA Live 06. We still had a blast with the PS2 version, but there are definitely benefits to the PC version.
And finally, Brad says that he hasn't, but has done something similar in so much as he's using his Xbox Series X more to play Xbox One games, so using the current-gen console to play prior-gen games. And I thought that was interesting, Derek, because honestly, I've mostly been using my PlayStation 5 to play a PS4 game, NBA 2K14, in my career. So first of all, that speaks to the value of backwards compatibility and why that's been so important to have in consoles over the past few generations. But yeah, it's interesting that you can have the latest technology, a really great gaming PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X or S, and still use it to play older games, which I think speaks to the value and the quality of classic games.
Yeah, I think that that's a great answer to this week's community question. And another example, like you stated, of why backwards compatibility is so important. I think there are people out there that would get past gen games just based on nostalgia, right? Maybe they wouldn't even put them on anymore, but they want them as part of their library. Maybe they'll just put them on every now and then just to look at them, just to reminisce, etc. But having that backwards compatibility allows people to do that. And it allows people to get some of those classics. You and I, personally, we love playing the classics. When we jump on the sticks, we're not just enjoying these games from a nostalgia perspective. We're actually enjoying the games, the gameplay, the presentation. We're in awe at, how well some of these older games play. Like we had just talked about on NBA 2K11 PS2, you got incredibly excited about that play, about dribbling around those defenders with Eric Maynor, flipping the pass to me throwing down a loud one-handed jam with Durant. Yeah, I know you want to see that in the NLSC Top 10 coming up because it was a pretty dynamic play. Our bench jumped up. They were excited about the play. Yeah, just moments like that. But yeah, the cool thing about retro gaming is you can have those experiences with games, 30, 35, even 40 years old. And yeah, that's why we play, because it never gets old.
Absolutely. And by the time this show comes out, this week's Monday Tip-Off will also be out. And Derek, this week I'm talking about how you don't have to miss games, because often we'll post these clips of games that we're playing, being avid retro gamers as we are, and people will say, oh, I really miss this game. And you don't have to. And obviously there are factors that prevent people from retro gaming, whether it's access to the games, not having the console anymore, not having the games anymore, etc. And I do go into that in the column as well. But one thing we do want to impress upon people is that you don't have to leave these games in the past if you don't want to. And of course, you don't have to commit to playing them as often as we do. You don't have to be an avid retro gamer. It doesn't have to be a regular part of your rotation if you don't want it to be. If you go back and play a game and discover, oh, it doesn't hold up quite as well for me personally, so be it. But you don't have to miss games. Retro gaming is very accessible. You have to shop around a little bit these days because there are a lot of sellers trying to gouge, trying to overcharge for retro games and consoles. Definitely be a savvy consumer. But if you still have access to those games, by all means, dust them off.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one thing that's hard to get back is the way you felt when the game was new, number one. Number two, the experiences you had when it was a new game.
Oh, sure.
Or when you were playing with a certain person, when you were playing locally, etc. So I think that that's always going to be hard to recapture. But I definitely think that retro gaming is accessible, and I encourage anybody to get into it and, pick up some of those classics and experience some of the other classics that maybe you didn't pick up at the time.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to revisiting games, seeing them in a new light, whether it was games I already liked and I like them even more and I'm surprised how well they hold up, or other games that I didn't like so much or overlooked back in the day completely and really come to enjoy, especially the NBA 2K series. One final note here, Derek. We did touch on NBA 2K14, obviously a favourite of ours. VF Baller did send us a tweet bringing up the possibility of us covering 2K14 as we look to take these deep dives into older games and talk about our favourites. Yeah, we might circle back and do a deep dive into 2K14, both versions of the game at some point, Derek.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's one of the greatest basketball video games ever made, and not just on Xbox One, PS4, but like I stated earlier, the PC version, which is a 360 and PS3 port. I know that he's having a blast right now in his season. He's been uploading footage, hoping to see him submit some top 10 plays at some point for the NLSC countdown. But yeah, there's plenty to cover with that release.
So stay tuned for that, I suppose, and please keep hitting us up with suggestions of topics, games you'd like to hear us cover on the show, and of course, play and share footage of on YouTube and our social media channels. But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's community question. As always, Derek, we love having the community as part of the conversation.
It never gets old. Thank you for taking part in this week's show. And yeah, I look forward to putting out the questions every week because I know that we're going to get some great responses.
With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. Thank you for tuning in. And a reminder that you can catch us every week on the NLSC, our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Also, both we and the NLSC are on social media and would appreciate a follow. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yep, you can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for all things basketball gaming. So, thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.